Happy November. It's crazy that it already is here and that the holidays are right about to knock on our door. So, we are very excited to have you all. Today, we're going to be covering metrics second edition. So, we're going to be going a little bit deeper into metrics today. With that being said, if this is your first time seeing our little lovely faces, Erica and Jody is my co-collaborator here. We started Hughes and Strong just honestly because we nerded out all about systems and different software and how do we make this work for the people on the ground because everybody is so different. And this led into actually creating Hughes and Strong so we can do this full time. So like I said, everybody's a little bit different. So anything we give you today is going to be with the caveat of see if it works for you first and foremost. With that, very important, if you have been here before, you have heard me knock on this before, but one thing that is really important to us is being really careful about what you take on your plate here, right? All of these are ideas that you could add into your double account. I'm still going to say keeper. So we're going to excuse some of that language here as we're getting our brains and our hands behind this new name change. But one thing that's really important for us is remembering that these are all for inspiration. None of this is like to add shame or to give you that overwhelming feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm not even scratching the surface of this. Like if your shoulders start becoming earrings, big deep breath. These are stuff that you could implement now if you want to, for one single client if you want to, or put it off until later if it is not the time for you. So just remember that these are inspiration and not anything that you should have set up to use double the most effectively.
Absolutely. All inspiration. But with that, like drop your comments into the chat at any point during our deep dive. So we'll start off talking about some custom metrics. While we're doing that, please drop questions into the chat at any point, whether it is about metrics or about any feature or any question that you have about double. Please go ahead and just throw those in the chat at any point. We monitor that the entire time, and we will circle back to all questions to make sure that we address each of those. So drop those questions in at any point. One other housekeeping thing, we will post the recording of today's call on Friday to our YouTube channel so that everybody will have access to that. If you have to cut out early for any reason, you can catch the recording there.
This is also helpful if you're one of those people that wants to sit and absorb on this call and not have to frantically take notes. Let this be an inspiration session where you just sit and enjoy and take notes of anything that's really cool and go back to the recording for the how to if you would like to. So just giving you that space to process this however you would like to and not have to take frantic notes if you're one of those friends like I am.
Yeah. All right. And so today we are continuing our talk on metrics. We're going to do a quick recap of what we covered last month, that intro into metrics. Then we're going to show you how to create custom metrics and to give you some examples and inspiration for different metric visuals that you could use. The whole goal today is just to help make metrics approachable. This is definitely not a, hey, you should add all of these things in to your client's reporting and, really get into all of these deep numbers. Nope, this is just to make them approachable so that if down the line you think, oh, I really want to show this to my client, how can I do that? This is going to give you that tool so that you know where to find it and then how to set it up if and when you want to. And then after that, open Q&A to talk about anything inside of Double. Just let us know what you're curious about.
Yep, absolutely. And just to kind of add on to that, like we said, this is going to be a little bit more high level, like what buttons do you click? This is not going to be the most tangible. We'll share examples because I think it's kind of hard to get the concept without some examples. But if you want to take the deep dive and go to Google, Facebook groups, the polarizing chat GPT to figure out for your industry or for your client what those best metrics are going to be, awesome. This is more going to be how do I, once I figure out what I want to add in there, or how do I start? That's going to be kind of today's topic. So we are
Yeah.
going to give a quick recap to make sure that you don't have to go watch last month's recording to even sit here and absorb, but just taking that into account that there are plenty of resources about industry specific or standards and stuff like that. So we will not be going into each individual niche today, but more how do we use it and how do we make this less overwhelming so that when you get an idea, you can go in and know what buttons to click.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump into that quick recap. So, recap of Metrics 101 from last month. Metrics are key data points or KPIs, but they're information that pulls from your financial reports and custom variables that you may pull in to create visuals, and you can use those to show patterns and trends and that kind of thing. So, to get there, you're going to be looking for the Metrics tab on your close page. So your close page is going to be here. Right next to it, you'll see metrics before you get to reporting. Now keep in mind that this is only available for those connected clients because it is pulling in from the financial reports. So it has to have that data to be able to pull in. The variables are basically a spreadsheet of information divided into tabs. So how it presents is very similar to a spreadsheet with rows and columns. And then the visuals give you the opportunity to create graphs or KPI cards and show that information in different ways. With those visuals, we have 7 different options. Here's a quick snapshot of each of those: bar charts, line charts, donut and pie charts, and then KPI cards as well. So, a lot of variety to be able to play around with how information looks. You can see that these are all core costs, core costs, core costs. It's the same thing, but presented in a different way. So you can play around with that and figure out like which one of these graphs or this visual would be the most helpful.
Absolutely. And we wanted to give a couple of examples before we even go deep diving. So when we say simple example, that's not to reduce the value that comes with these,
Hmm.
but it's just to say that these are ones that we won't have to do any advanced formulas or put in any like manual numbers. These are things that we can pull from the profit and loss, the balance sheet, the cash flow sheet without having to do number crunching. So we could easily do income versus expenses. We could easily show those key account balances to kind of keep an eye on some of those. We could easily do sales by service line or location, again, if you have those set up in the COA, or we could do cost of goods sold. All of those are straight pulling, no advanced, no crazy stuff behind the scenes, and they're very easy to set up 5, 10 minutes without having to do any crazy thing past that. So again, simple does not mean that it's not valuable because again, I think a whole lot of like just metrics in general is how do we tell the story of this? How do we make it visual so that it's not just a P&L that somebody's going to skim and hope that they understand what you're trying to show them, right? So just kind of helping put some context around these simple are easier to set up and they pull directly from our like management reports essentially. Some more examples that we're going to cover today and get a little bit more creative about are these customer advance metrics where we can start to show margins. We can start to show percentage of income or expenses. Think donut chart, like how much of the chart is it taking up? We can even do kind of crazy things like budget versus actual. So there is a lot that we can do here. Honestly, possibilities are endless. These will take a little bit more to set up and maybe a little bit more to maintain. So, a lot
Hmm.
of this is going to come into what's in scope for you. And I will stand on my soapbox for 2 seconds and then I will get off very quickly. But I want to make sure that we're really anchoring in that, like with these custom or advanced metrics, this is more work. Okay, so make sure that you are accounting for this in your scope and making sure that you are actually valuing your time and effort that you put into this, not only for the setup that it requires, but the actual advanced knowledge that comes into these, because inevitably you're going to have client questions about these, right? Like the goofy thing about setting up a visual is that it makes this more easier to grasp, and then it's natural for somebody to have questions about them, right? So let's set these up with the understanding that one, it's going to be a little bit more work. And two, we're probably going to have some more advanced questions about it. So we want to make sure that we are valuing our expertise, our knowledge, and the time that we're setting this up. So now I will get off my soapbox. That is just being mindful of your scope because, like we want to mention, like this is a rabbit hole, which is awesome, very exciting. A lot of us can get very nerdy about this. If you are anything like Jody and I, you can go down it for hours. That also means be very intentional about setting this up in your scope, right? But also go in, do a little bit of brainstorming before you get in here. What do I want to tell or show? Because I mean, I was even guilty of this. I was watching Tyler Otto's video to kind of get some inspiration to figure out where to start. But it's super easy to get so locked into, okay, what are the formulas? What are the metrics? What are the like pieces I want to show without really taking in the full scope of wait, not the formulas I'm trying to add, but what's the story I'm trying to tell? What am I trying to illustrate here? What patterns am I trying to show? So just a really quick, like, make sure that you're not just putting numbers for numbers' sake because it's a lot of work. Like we want to make sure that we're actually giving value and putting in things that are going to be helpful for this client that helps them realize like these discrepancies or these patterns. So maybe that was a little bit of a secondary soapbox, but I just want to make sure that we're all going into this not getting so focused on the numbers, the formulas, the like percentages, like this is nitty gritty, but we want to go in and do some brainstorming first about what is this client even having trouble with? What are those areas that they came to me to say, okay, these are numbers on a page, but I don't understand this, or I'm having an issue with this area of my business. That's going to drive the numbers and the metrics that you set up far more than the formulas that somebody tells you to set up. So just make sure, set a timer, be mindful of the rabbit hole that this can become.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Erica. All of that is very valuable to keep in mind for sure, because it's easy to start filling the pages with visuals, and then those visuals become overwhelming just as much as the P&L does. All right, but okay, so how do we create these custom? Let's get into our deep dive even more here. So creating custom variables, when you are on a variables tab, there's a little plus button down here in the corner. Click on that. It'll give you the option to select the type of tab that you want to. So you can add additional profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow. You can add more of those and kind of customize them like a profit and loss by class or project. But today we're focusing on the custom pages. So you just give it a name and add it. And then once you have that, the second step is to start adding in your rows. And here you can do numbers or formulas. You can also create some dividers just to help yourself break up the information. And as you are working in there, we do have some things that we can edit. So here's one of the examples that we have with income targets. So we've got some numbers, and then we've created formulas to kind of tally those up. Space here, some cost of goods sold numbers, and another formula, and then we formulated our gross profit. So in this example here, we are doing targets. It's kind of another word for budget, but I don't need to plug in an entire budget into my variables here if I'm only going to be looking at specific numbers. We'll get into that in more detail when we jump over to the demo. But once you've got this started, you can double click in here to rename it. You have some settings over here where you can change the type. You can also do some copy and pasting in here as well to help save time as you're filling these in or getting them started. And then, of course, you can update the formulas even after you have put them in the first time. All of the variable tabs here, all of them are going to show you 12 months of data. So that'll always be the standard theirs. It's always going to show 12 months. There's no way to customize that to be more or less. It will always be 12 months worth. But for this deep dive, we're going to be able to just show you a lot more in the demo. So we're going to go ahead and jump over there. As we mentioned, drop comments or questions in the chat, whether it's about metrics or anything else. But let me switch over to the demo and we will show how to do these. All right. So when you are in here, again, we're coming to the metrics tab here at the top. It will default to the variables pages. And you'll see down here, we can tab through. We've got our full profit and loss. You have your full balance sheet, your cash flow. These are not ones that you can edit. So you can try to click in here. This is pulling directly from the accounting software. So they're not editable. Um, it just is what it is, but you can add additional ones here. So if you wanted to add more, you can, and then make some adjustments about classes or customers, name it what you want. So that is available there. And then as we mentioned, you can do a custom tab as well. So I'm going to name this one example for today.
And one thing I want to mention here, work with your brain here. Like everybody's going to set up their tabs differently. You don't have to have one tab per KPI or formula that you're doing. So I think that's one to just note, like I've seen people where their tabs get crazy. And if that's what works best for your brain, go for it. Like this is
Mhm.
not to should on you, right? But that is to just mention like we can do a single tab with all of our different KPIs. So just kind of keep in mind, I don't want you to feel like you have to create a new tab for each formula.
Right, right. So we've got our example here. This is what it's going to show you when you initially add it. And then up here in the corner is where you can start adding rows. So I'll just add a number here. Um, Type in, and then this would be something where I am going to manually add numbers in. So that's what the number column would be, or a number row would be. Adding in a formula. This one is where you can really start getting crazy and have lots of fun. Let's say we want to do a profit margin. I can name that here. And so maybe I want to do. So once you start typing, it's going to show you where those are. So I have these set up in KPIs. I have them accounts or variables with income in the name in income targets as well. And then here's my profit and loss, my balance sheet, cash flow. So as you start typing up here, it's going to limit the list to choose from. All right. So that's what I'm going to pick for that and click apply. And so now it's going to give me that margin. If I needed to edit this, I can always come in here and edit the formula, select new ones, change that up however I need to. If I needed to change the name, I can do that by double clicking in here as well. If I have this and I want to change it to a number or change it to a divider, I can do that as well. And you can get into more things as you build it out. If you want to change the style, you can bold it. You can indent it if you need to help add some variety to how it's displayed.
And one thing I want to mention here is that that styling and indent is for you, right? We're going to create visuals that help our clients see it. This page purely for you. So just think about what you're going to need here. Don't worry so much about, oh, I want to make this bold so it's easier for the client. That won't show on this page. This is just for us to be able to visualize and keep everything straight. So just make sure that you're making those changes for you specifically.
Right. So that's what that would look like here. And one thing to note on all of these, now if you try to go off of the page, it's going to warn you, but you always, always, always want to hit save. It will warn you if you make a change to something and then you don't end up saving it. So say I want to do this update and then I move off, it will prompt you to save. But just heads up, I can't tell you the number of times I've built something out and then accidentally said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine to move off," and then went, "No, I meant to save that and I didn't." And then you have to redo it all. So this is an area of double where you definitely need to hit that save button up here in the corner. All right, so here's a KPI tab that we created that has a bunch of different examples of formulas and numbers that you can enter in that we then use to create additional visual examples as well. So this is just kind
Yeah.
of some information or inspiration.
Exactly. And I want to take a minute to pause here, just to make sure it's clear and we didn't skim past anybody. Numbers are the manual. I'm going to pull this from my customer's CRM or their POS system or somewhere else for
Hmm.
to enter in manually the number of customers they have or the number of employees they currently have, right? So that's a really good, when we're talking about numbers, I want to make sure that that's really clear, like what's going to be a manual entry versus a formula that's going to pull from some of our other pieces and do the calculations for us. So when we're talking about numbers versus formulas, that's an easy way to think about it. The other thing I want to mention here is that going back to really thinking about the story you want to create, I have an example here for labor as a percentage of income. So that formula is labor divided by the total income. I also could do labor as a percentage of expenses. Both of those are going to tell my client very different things, right? So, labor as a percentage of income may be something like we don't want our rent or our labor going over 30% of what we make. So, we're going to keep an eye on that and watch it versus labor as a percentage of expenses. Maybe, hey, out of the pie chart of all of my expenses, how much of the pie is taken up by labor? Right. So very, very similar. It's super easy to get lost and be like, wait, do I put this over income or expenses? Right. And get stuck in that formula. That's when I would like zoom back, take a step back and think about the like actual story I'm trying to tell or the pattern I'm trying to point out here. So we just wanted to highlight that in the examples because you can do these a million ways to Sunday, depending on how you're trying to paint that picture or the issue that the client's having that you're trying to watch out for.
And one thing to note with your numbers. So as Erica mentioned, these formulas, they're pulling from somewhere else, depending on how you have that set up. They're pulling from other accounts or other data and then doing that calculation for you. Numbers are something, as she mentioned, that you have to manually enter. So when you initially set these up, you'll be adding in all of your historical information. Or if it's something you're like, okay, we're starting this month, then you enter it in for this month, and then each subsequent month you're going to be adding that in. So the income targets that we have, I have this set up as an example. So we set this up previously. We've created the new October close, and you'll see that October is empty. So all of this will remain in here. And then I can come in and say, okay, what were the targets supposed to be for October? And I can copy and paste these in, or I can manually enter them in either way and get that information. And I'm going to copy these over too, just for simplicity. Now, once I hit save, my formulas are going to populate. There we go. So now when I go to create the November close, I'll have one column to update. So for maintenance and for continuing this data set, it'll just be 1 month at a time. So when you initially get started, if you want historical data in there, you'll want to paste it all in or manually enter them all in. And then it's just 1 month at a time to maintain.
Yeah, really good mention there because like many things in our business, the setup is different than the maintenance. So
Yes.
your setup is going to be more inclusive and have more data that you have to enter, but month to month, it's going to be less objectively because you only have to fill in that month. Good mention there, Jody.
And as we mentioned, you could do a full budget in here, but it does take effort to get everything added in. So if you want to be more particular or more selective of the lines that you put in and say, okay, I'm only going to add in the ones that we're actually using for visuals. Because like Erica said, this is all internal. The point of these tabs is to be able to create visuals to show your client. Um, so it's not necessarily something that you have to have fully built out like you might have in an actual Excel spreadsheet.
Exactly. And just to say that a different way, like the if we're doing a budget versus actual or a target versus actual, this is not going to be a full page like our P&L in the management report. We're going to be able to create a visual off of it, like a line chart, a bar chart, a donut chart, however we want to. But I think it's really important because a lot of us can get stuck in this, well, I have to have a full budget so that they can see it all. They're objectively not going to. So that's why we're saying be selective in what you're actually going to show and compare budget versus actual or target versus actual, because you may not need all of the line items. You may not create a graph for all of them. So just think about the ones that you're actually going to create a graph for, and that's what I would start with. Also, additionally, you can always add to. So I think one thing that's really important for Jody and I, and that we have to come back to a lot is, hey, let's start with something. We can always add to or adjust based on what our client needs or how this develops. We don't have to have everything set up in order to launch this, in order to start this. So we can always kind of add to as we go and as we figure out those different things that the client is going to want to watch for.
Hmm. All right. I guess let's pop over to the visuals tab and just kind of give that example as well using some of these. This is our demo account, so we do already have quite a few examples shown. For the first ones here, target versus actual with their income and the COGS. But if I wanted to create a new one, just click Add Visual. And maybe I'll do the gross profit here. Then, so once I give it a title and I select which one I want to use, I really like the area chart. And then I can come in here and look for um, the gross profit target and then the gross profit actual. So the way that I always do this is start typing. If you want, you can skim this list. But what we discovered as we were prepping is that sometimes it's not necessarily in alphabetical order. So you see there's two KPIs up here at the top, but then you have to scroll down and then there's some more here in the middle. So some of them can get lost if you're like, I created all of these things and now I'm not seeing them. Where are they? Just start typing, and that'll help. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
do
definitely had a
my
mini panic
target.
because I was like, Jody, I made all of these. They're not showing up. She was like, just type it in the search bar. You can probably find it. So if you run
Yeah,
into that issue, or maybe save yourself from running into that and just start typing in the first place.
right. All right, so I have my target in there, and now I'm going to put my actual in here, and I'll make that orange, save. And so now my client's going to be able to see a clear differentiation, excuse me, of the target versus what they actually brought in. While we're in here, you can compare. This may not be a particular one that you would do that for, uh, but you can also decide how many months you're showing. Remember, you have 12 months available, but you don't have to use all of those. It will default to that every time, but maybe I just want to show calendar year for where we are today, and I'll hit save, and that's going to add it in there for me up here at the top.
I think one thing to mention here, um, there are some quirks in here. One of the ones that I want you to be careful about is at least, Jody, check me on this actually. Can you go hit the cog icon on that to see if we can change the color once we've created
No,
it?
you can't. So
Okay,
in order to
so
change the color, you have to remove it
remove that variable and
and
add
then
it
add
back.
it back in and choose a different color.
Okay,
Great
so
one.
the only reason I mention that is because when I was creating a couple for this demo, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do these two. And they ended up being so close that you couldn't really tell the difference. So just be careful in when you're creating these that you probably choose colors that are a little bit further across on the color spectrum, just because it is a little bit more cumbersome to go in and change them later. So it's not saying that
Mhm.
you can't. There is a workaround for deleting it and re-adding that variable specifically, but I would kind of give you the tip ahead of time to choose colors that are further apart.
I have seen people also, if they're doing multiple visuals, but they're using the same variable, that they will use the same color across the different visuals. So some people find that helpful. Others, they don't care. It's like whatever colors pop up, totally fine. Others are like, nope, if I'm using gross profit here, if I use it anywhere else, I want it to be the same color. that's just up to you. You do have that option to select those.
And then one thing that's important to note here as you're creating the visuals, you can rearrange them. So those
Yes.
dots on the side kind of hamburger stack allow you to move them around. Or if you pull it to one side, then that's how you create the two side by side there. So that one was not intuitive for me. So I just want to point that out while we're in here that sometimes we go back and add one and we're like, oh, I actually want these two next to each other because they make a really nice comparison. But I was having trouble with that personally. So at least want to kind of mention that
Yeah.
that is possible. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of playing around on the page.
Yeah. And how you do have them arranged here is how they will show up on your management report. So when you go to the reporting tab, or in your interactive reports in the client portal, however you have them arranged here is how they'll show up there as well.
Yep,
All
absolutely. And
right.
I think as you're scrolling down, let's talk through a couple of those other examples just to make sure that we're not just showing the tangibles, but we're actually helping give people some inspo. So that profit margin is an easy KPI card, is what that's called. So it's just a quick reference. There's no necessarily like donut or anything associated with it. But remember how I was talking about that percentage of income versus percentage of expense? These are really good examples. So that percentage of income on the left-hand side is kind of being able to show that versus how I may break that down into a donut chart and see where all of my expenses came from. So just wanted to make sure that we were
Yeah.
kind of highlighting how that could be differentiated and shown as well.
And as you're doing this, if you decide, oh, I don't really like the look of this, let me change it and see if it looks different. If I were to do a donut chart instead of a pie chart, um, you can always play around with that to see what the differences are, and how your client might like to see that.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, TLDR version, there's a lot you can do in here, both from pulling just the stuff off of the profit and loss or balance sheet, like that income versus expenses. Oh my gosh, me as an owner, that would actually put a light bulb on my head versus like actually trying to see that in a profit and loss where it's all just black and white numbers on the page. So you can do a whole lot. And we would actually recommend starting with just those kind of regular tabs or default tabs. But just know that you can take this as far as you would like to. Each of these, really important mention, there is a canning request out there for this, but at this current time in doubles history, we cannot take one that we've created for one client and copy and paste it or create a template over four of these metrics. So that's also one to just note. And that's part of the reason we talked about scope here as well, because these will be created for each individual client, which makes sense, right? Each client is going to look at something different. We may have different industries across our clients and different stuff that they care about. But we just want to make sure and mention that on the front end. You're not missing anything if you don't see a template for this.
Right. Yep. And that's actually great timing because Heather just chimed into the chat asking about if I create a variable for one client, does that then translate to all clients that it's available on? So we're talking about being here on the variables tab. If you create a new tab here, is that new tab going to be available across all your connected clients? Unfortunately, the answer is no. All of the variables, everything related to metrics is client specific. So whatever you create here, it will be only for this client.
Yep. And I know last time we talked to the team, the double team is trying to work on and kind of brainstorm this. The reason that it's limited right now, just so you can understand kind of the thought process behind, is these pull from the the
Chart of
COA from
accounts.
what you
Yeah.
have created for each individual client. So you may not have that exact line item in another client's chart of accounts. So that's kind of what the team is troubleshooting behind the scenes is how can we do that if each client's chart of accounts is different. So that may not be an immediate fix. That's the reason why, in case anybody else is just like, I don't understand why this is hard, because that was me.
Mm.
I don't understand software development. That is not my forte. So I at least wanted to give you the why behind the scenes, that this isn't a quick and easy fix for the team behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
All right. With that, I mean, wide open for questions, everybody. anything that you have about what we've covered today. If you don't have questions about what we covered today, are there any other areas of double, any other features, anything that you're trying to troubleshoot or that you just don't understand or you've been curious about and want to explore more? The floor is open. So go ahead and throw those questions in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So Martha's got one to kick us off related to metrics, but again, feel free to throw it related to metrics or not. So Martha's asking, was the number
Mm,
of new clients that we saw a little while ago something that was pulled in or that was manual? So easy way to think about this, my coaching answer is think about whether this is in QBO anywhere. If it's not, it's a manual number that we entered. So answer here, tangibly, those are ones that we actually pulled and entered manually. I honestly could not tell you if there is a Zap or an API behind the scenes that could do some number magic for you. That one's a little bit over my pay grade, or at least not something that we have delved into to
yeah.
figure out if that is possible behind the scenes. I won't say it is. I won't say it isn't. We just haven't explored it. This one personally, the way that we set this up is just a manual entry. So we
Mhm.
went in and added these numbers, and then each month after, you would go in and review that POS system or CRM system or invoicing system, whatever, to pull those couple of numbers that you need to enter in.
Yeah.
So, Martha, hopefully that gives you a behind the scenes, like think about whether it's in QBO and you can pull it. Otherwise, it was a manual one.
I think that's a good point to make, but also I could also see where this could get confusing too, because Double can pull in and say, oh, you've got 5 new customers this month with the
Oh,
newly
yeah.
added customers,
Yeah.
but that is not something that feeds into metrics. So those reports that we get on the close page for your payee and entity review reports, those are not feeding into your metrics area. But you could look at that and then quickly update your metrics. If you are looking at those reports for the past month and you're using that for something else, that would be a pretty quick review it here and then jump over to the next tab and enter in that data as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that because I didn't necessarily make the connection there, but it seems obvious, right? Like, well, if it's pulling over in this area, could it pull over here? Current answer is not at this time, but that
Right.
does make it an easy reference point that we can go look at that pretty quickly and pull it over into this
Yeah.
section. Beautiful. Okay. Tanya also has a question. So, this is related to files. So, when a client uploads a doc into their portal, can they delete the document or receipt if needed, or would we, as the bookkeeper, need to be the one that deleted that document or receipt? Really good question here.
It is a great question. I'm not 100% sure I know the definitive answer for this. I know in the past there had been difficulties for clients to see the files after they posted them. Um, so what I did right here is I'm going into the portal. I'm looking at the preview function to see, okay, what does my client see when they're in here? This is a good way to test things out. So if maybe they did receipts. Do we have that built out? We don't. Okay. So from here, I don't think they have the ability to delete it. Um, but with the receipts feature, that's different than just the uploads inbox. And I know that there have been some updates with receipts features, but I don't know the answer to that at this moment. I'd have to research it or look into it. Plus, even if they do have the ability to delete it, will it delete it from your side as well? Is a great question. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we'll look into that. I think the last time we checked, this was not possible. We'll just make sure that there hasn't been an update behind the scenes.
Yeah,
So I will tinker with that behind the scenes for a couple minutes and see if I can find a quick answer.
great question.
Absolutely. I think that also goes into play. We had somebody on one of our clients asking, like, can clients rename something on their side to
Hmm.
give it to us in a nicer, prettier name than a whole bunch of letters and numbers that do not do anything. The answer right now for that is no. So I would assume that the baseline is the same there as far as
Okay.
functionality. Alrighty, that's the end of the questions that I have in the chat. Um, Jody, while we're waiting to see if anybody else has any other questions, um, I had heard a couple people in the Facebook group talking about, okay, I have so many overdue tasks. Is there any way to clear these out in bulk so I don't have to go
Yes.
one by one on the client page? So while we're waiting to see if anybody else has questions, that might be a good one to just kind of fill the time and make sure that everybody knows how to do that. Because I know part of a lot of our year-end processes or beginning of year processes is, okay, what's all the clutter that's accumulated over the last year, and how do we want to clear those out without deleting everything, right? Because we still
Yes.
need historical records. We don't want to mess with our recurring tasks and delete it, but how do we clear that out without painstakingly going one
Yes.
by one?
Yeah. Okay, so there's two different things I want to point out in conjunction with this. So if it is a reoccurring task and maybe you've just gotten behind on it, so a good example would be like a daily task. And you're like, oh, I have not checked that off in 2 weeks. If I check it off, then the next day is going to populate and it'll still be overdue, right? Um, so let's see, here's a good one. This one's due today, but pretend that it was due long ago. I'm like, oh, I've missed too many of them. And if I check it off, it's just going to populate the next occurrence. And so if you're behind by multiple, you're then going to be checking off. It'll populate, check it off, check it off, check it off. If you don't want to do that, you can click in here. So for anything that's a reoccurring task that you're behind on, come to that task and just update the due date, the starts on date. Update it and bring it current. That way you don't have to like backtrack and like check off all of these tasks that were done before. So anything that's reoccurring that you are behind on, I strongly, strongly recommend just updating the starts on date to bring it current. Because otherwise you're going to be going through a whole bunch of just monotonous clicking to bring it current. So manually bring those current. You can do this from the tasks page as well. But to do things in bulk for just marking them done or skipped, let's go to the tasks page. This is one of my favorite things to do is help people clean up their accounts. It's one of those weird little things I nerd out about. Um, so when we're in here on our tasks page, we do have the ability to filter this down to just things that are overdue. So I can do that. It'll take a minute to load. And then from here, oh my goodness, look at this. We have things from 23, from 2023 in here that are overdue. All right, you know what? I've got a lot in here, so I'm going to go ahead and change this page to 100 per page so that I can clean up things faster. Um, you can filter these down however you wish. You can filter by the workflow. So you can select like, okay, I know that I want to cancel out everything from before 2025. Select all of those. Um, the reason for filtering things down more is just so you can be more precise if you need to be. The other thing I've seen this done with is like specific tasks that maybe you need to delete. You can do that as well in here. I'm getting ahead of myself. I told you guys I nerd out about this. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of old tasks from 2023. I can bulk select these. So I have 100 tasks selected here. I can go ahead and set the status and mark them as done or canceled. Either one of these will remove them from the active tasks or tasks that are due. Either one of these will put them in the completed uh, file here. So if I look at the status, this is what it's going to show you. So anything with these statuses are considered not completed and they will show up on my list. Anything marked it done or canceled is marked as completed. So they won't show up anymore. So if it's something that's like I didn't do them, I don't want to mark them done, I'm just going to mark them canceled. I can do that. It'll clear them out. Um, without
I think
getting too into the weeds, I'll stop there.
I think a good thing to mention here, I can't remember off the top of my head whether the default is called canceled or if we
It
change
is.
that name. Okay, I have seen some people rename that as skipped. So regardless, th those still function the same if you've renamed that and you're only seeing skipped in your double account. But I think a secondary question that usually comes up for us is that panicky feeling about, wait, I don't know if I actually did it. Should I mark it done? For any of those type A's who feel like you want to follow the rules here. Me personally, that is how I fall. So I tend to mark those as canceled or skipped. If I want to go back, which who knows how likely that is. But if I wanted to go back to those, I could look at any of those that I've marked canceled previously and go back and do a little bit of historical kind of research if I wanted to. If you are one of those that's like, dude, I just want to clear it out, it's done. I know I did it, or even if I didn't, I'm not going to look back at it. Don't sweat. Like either one of those function the same to
Hmm.
clear it off your overdue list. But if you are one of those that either one of those answers feels right or wrong, trust your gut there.
Yep. Yep. Let's see if I could find one that's from a custom.
I think that trick to like move it to the most recent recurrence date is a really good one.
Yes.
The only reason that that is up to date is because I went in and cleaned that up this morning, and that's the exact hack that I used because this is our demo. I wasn't in there every single day, and we had a daily task that I was like, I'm gonna have to clear this out 23 times. And with recurring tests, it's a little bit goofy because you check one off and then it waits to load, and then the next one pops
Yep.
up, right? So you have to, you can get in this loop where you have to wait a little bit. It doesn't happen immediately. So slow down internet folks, or just, I want to get on to the next thing. Adjust that starts on date. Just make sure it falls within that like recurrence and you don't mess yourself up with that. But
Yeah.
really quick kind of hack for that one.
Right. And you can reference it right here when's the next reminder going to be. So if you are behind and you're like, okay, what's the next one supposed to be? Oh, it's supposed to be January 31st. I can go ahead and bump that forward to what I need it to be. Now, the downside is you can't bulk set those due dates. So when you do bulk select, you will see what options you have. You can change the status, you can change the assignee, and new feature here, everybody, very exciting for me because I get in here and clean up stuff all the time, is that you can now bulk set the section, which means that you can move tasks in bulk from one section to another section now. This is brand new. It used to be extraordinarily tedious going task by task by task. So as your account evolves, if you need to move things around, that's now a feature. But the bulk action menu is limited here. So you can't bulk update due dates, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll mention two other things on there. Um, Set section, right, to move those around is a really good example. If you've just used the general section up at the top and you realize later on that you actually want to move some of those tasks to their own custom payroll section or their own custom onboarding section, it's a really great way to do that in bulk and not have to go painstakingly one by one. So that's kind of a when would I use this kind of example. The other one that I definitely want us to be careful with, but just know that this is possible, is you can delete selected tasks in bulk as well. So this comes into play a lot of times if we have gotten a little excited, we've dropped in a template and we're like, oh, fudge monkeys, I messed that up, or there's a typo in there, or something like that. That can be a really easy one to search by the task name or by the client that you dropped those in on, and either select all on the page or go one by one and kind of bulk select, oh, it's these five, and delete those selected so you can drop in a new one. So just wanted to kind of overview some of those bulk actions, especially now that some of those have changed.
Another good, like, just check on your account, see how things are going, is looking at this no task name. This will help you find any that are blank. So maybe somebody accidentally clicked. Oh, we don't have any. Look at us. Good for us. Our demo account is clean. But if somebody accidentally clicked like add task, but then they didn't end up using it, those add up and they collect. And you can always come in and clear those out too.
Yeah, little mini cleanup session here. But
Yeah.
those no task names, we do diagnostic reviews of double accounts all the time, and that's one that I'm always looking for is how many tasks are overdue, how many tasks are blank and added by accident that are going to stack up, how many don't have an assignee, so they're not going to show up on anybody's task list, or don't have a due date
Yeah,
and
that's
are
another fun
not going to
one.
show up on anybody's task list. So if you are going into cleanup mode, those are a couple of things to just to watch out for.
Yeah.
With that, Jody, we are getting close to time. So
Yep.
we may switch back to the slides and just mention next month's topic as well as how to get help if you are like, ooh, cool, now I have a laundry list of things
Yeah.
that I need help with.
Yep. So save the date. Our next Q&A is going to be December 17th. Um, and we are going to do like a little deep dive into prepping for year end. So kind of give some suggestions on how to approach adding in things that you might need to do for year end or building that out if you haven't built that out before, and you want to do it for the first time and apply it across multiple clients, that kind of thing. So we'll be touching base on prepping for year end next month.
Yep. And then if you enjoyed just some freebies and learning more about Double, we have these monthly Q&As. Like I mentioned, you can always go back to our YouTube channel where past recordings. So if you want to go skim the topics that we've covered before or go back to Metrics 101, more than welcome to. We also have an additional resources page that's changed the name now. So hughesandstrong.com/double instead of /keeper for any PDF. So if you're curious about how to use tags or how to set up your client portal and some of the options there, we definitely have some fun PDFs that can get you started there. And then that kind of naturally leads into if you need more help, reach out. We have a full spectrum. We specialize in double right now. So this is one that, regardless of whether you land on the side of, hey, can you just look at my account and see what I could be doing better? Or kind of take a look with fresh eyes, all the way to, hey, I really need this set up, but I don't want to do the tedious clicks or anywhere in between. Definitely reach out. I think one of the ones that I want to mention specifically for this kind of Q&A is if you have a vision for, hey, I'd really like to set these metrics up, but I'm getting caught, I can't figure out the buttons or I don't have time. That's a really good one to reach out. Again, we love this sort of stuff and figuring out whether it's possible or what buttons you need to click or how to configure it. So if you're running into time crunch with end of year or just like, this doesn't sound fun, that's a really great place to kind of reach out. We're happy to help on any capacity, whether that's just answering a quick question and pointing you to a button or actually helping you set up something. So that's our quick mention. If you do see your task list stacking up for adjustments that you want to make in double, feel free to reach out so you don't have to do that by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, in addition to what she was mentioning with metrics, that kind of goes for any reporting that you might be pulling from your accounting software. Especially QBO has an extensive report listings. If there's anything in there that you're like, I really want to be able to see this in double, can I? Bring it on over to us. That's one of my favorite things to do is to troubleshoot and see, can I replicate something from somewhere else inside of double? So I'm happy to do that work for you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to time. Jody, I do want to highlight one more small thing behind the scenes that was added in here pretty recently, and then we'll go ahead and close.
All
So
right.
if you don't mind popping back into the demo, going to our practice settings, and then I know there's been a lot of people that have always consistently griped about my line doesn't turn green because I haven't completed all the tasks. But I need it to be green. I'm done with this close. So if you are one of those friends, we do have a feature that's been added in now.
Yes, I love this. All right, so it's going to be on your practice management under workflows. We now have client list done highlight. So that lovely green line. You can choose one if it's on or off. So if you're like, you know what, I don't want the green line, it's distracting, I don't like it, go ahead and turn it off. But if you want, you can have it to be automatically turned on when all the tasks are marked done. That includes your custom tasks too. Or you can say, no, when I mark the close and I choose the done status for my close, that's when I want it to turn green. You can select that here. So you now have some options for if that line turns green and when that line turns green.
Yeah, this was one of those
I
that I
love
think a
it.
lot of us missed. It was just kind of hidden in a change report. But the couple of people that I've had on a diagnostic review that they were like, dude, this drives me crazy. I either hate the color to begin with, like I don't want a line, or I completed my month-end close. Please turn this green. Now you actually have the option to choose how you want to fall and for Double to follow you in the way that your brain works best.
Makes me think. Okay.
Oh, we do have
Ooh,
one more question, so feel free
great
if you have
question.
anything you want to show. Yeah.
Well, we can go ahead and answer that. So Heather asked, does manually choosing to mark as closed, so marking it as done from your client, automatically mark all of those tasks complete? The answer to that is no. So those tasks will still show up on your task list as incomplete. Um, but that line will turn green if you have that toggled on in your settings. So in the reverse, it works. So if you mark all of your tasks complete for your close, then that can drive the status to change to done, but it doesn't happen in reverse. If you change the status, it will not automatically mark everything closed.
Yep. And I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted to mention how to bulk mark those as done if you have a bunch outstanding and it's just easier rather than going down the page for each individually. But I think the logic behind that, because I actually asked Kenny, I was like, why is this the case? Many of those things, like we don't want it to mark over if a task is marked waiting on client. Like I actually don't want it to auto clear out and say that it's done. I want to have that record of, or even there's a lot of people that use task statuses to mark that this is complete, but it was completed late. So we don't want it to auto mark. That would be lovely if we had the option to kind of choose in our settings. For right now, marking it done is just a status change. It will not affect your individual tasks, but marking all of your month-end closed tasks as done will auto update the status to done. So important distinction there for sure. Alrighty, friends. Well, we are at the top of the hour. We don't want to keep anybody late, especially if we don't have any other questions outstanding. But definitely reach out to us if you have more questions or if you want more individualized help with anything from what we talked about today to anything in double. More than happy to help. Okay. So you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll see you next month for talking about year end. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.